Hello, and welcome to the Proactive Caregiving Podcast. As a CPA with over 20 years as an industry accountant, Jessica stepped away from the corporate world to become a full-time caregiver for her mother. Having learned invaluable lessons along the way, she is now here to share those with you and to invite you to join her on this caregiver's journey. Here is your host, Jessica Cannon.
Hello, everybody. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I am the Proactive Caregiver, and I specialize in educating others on how to be proactive by empowering you, the caregiver. If you cannot take care of yourself, then you cannot take care of your loved one. And along those lines, Respite Care. Respite Care is a great opportunity when a caregiver is willing to seek it out, but oftentimes we end up talking ourselves out of why it's important or convincing ourselves we can get by without it. I think this happens for a number of reasons. A few being support and information on how to keep our own safety with that of our loved ones in check, or managing their own stress, or navigating multiple levels of care from medical to legal paperwork to learning nursing skills even, all can be very traumatizing, and it makes us feel stuck in reality sometimes. I know I do occasionally. But with this, there is this rise in caregiver needs that is becoming more and more important, especially now with the challenges our caregivers face in this new normal around the world. Because, in the United States alone, the number of caregivers have risen by over 10% since 2015, with 43 million caregivers to 53 million in 2020, which was pre-COVID. And the scary thing about that is that caregivers are becoming younger and younger. They're being faced with this between the ages of 18 to 34. So my next guest knows all too well about the need to educate our caregivers, especially those in elder care communities. We often ask how to care for them before we even consider what we're caring for and why they need the care when it comes to dementia. Judy Cornish is an author and founder of the Dementia and Alzheimer's Wellbeing Network, or DAWN. She's the creator of the DAWN Method and a retired elder law attorney. Her two books, The Dementia Handbook and Dementia with Dignity, take a person-centered dementia care from theory to practice by identifying the skills not lost to dementia. Through DAWN, Judy provides counseling, private classes, and an online video program for families and home caregivers. Her goal is to help families learn how to truly support their loved ones and enjoy more companionship as they live with dementia. Judy, thank you so much for coming on with me today.
Oh, Jessica, I've been looking forward to it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. I love your material, and I love the perspective that you help, the fresh perspective that you help people see in terms of what dementia looks like and how to care for someone living with it.
I think it's so important that we think about that we're families and we're not medical professionals ourselves most of the time. And so my work has been directed towards helping us as families understand what we can do.
Absolutely. And that's something that I think caregivers, I think we beat ourselves up for that sometimes when we get those feelings of not being enough for our loved ones or not knowing enough and the added stresses and all of that.
That's true. And it's so important that we don't, because we've been looking after our elders just like we've been looking after our children for all of human history. And we didn't have medical science to help us centuries ago. And yet we still managed to raise our children and to look after our elders.
Right.
So I think we need to be careful that we understand we are equipped. We just need we need education. We need to know what the experience is like from other people who have gone through it.
Exactly. So when did you first experience being a caregiver?
Boy, for me, most of us, it's a family member. But for me, it was a neighbor. And I was practicing law in Portland, Oregon, and decided that I wanted to semi-retire and live a quieter life. And eventually I found Moscow, Idaho, a little town, little university town with about 25,000 people. And as I was settling in, I got to know a woman in her probably mid-60s who lived across the street. And she had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and that was my introduction to really getting to know somebody who was experiencing dementia or Alzheimer's.
You're right. There is that difference that if it's not a spouse, it's a parent, but there's so many different areas and ways to be exposed. I'm so glad you were there to step in with them.
Yeah, and so many of us live alone, and this woman, she had 3 children, but just like most of our families, her children lived further away. I think her closest child would have been 2 states away.
Oh.
And so after her husband died, she was living in the family home, the same home she raised the kids in, and that they had been retired in. And now she was living alone and beginning to experience memory loss and changes in her ability to solve problems. Her rational thinking skills were changing and beginning to fade. And so that was my introduction. But, as a neighbor, I was just getting to know her. And then one weekend, her daughter came to visit and realized how much her mother was needing help, that she really, and I remember the daughter coming across the street one evening and saying, boy, Mom's living alone over there, but she keeps losing the car. So we're just going to have to put her in a care facility. And, and I just could not let that happen. Here's this lovely person, and I knew she was forgetful, because she constantly repeated things to me, when I'd pop over to chat. She's gardening, and she had I know she had this incredible sticky note system, and she had a notebook, and she'd write down what she needed to do, and then she'd check it off each day. And there were sticky notes everywhere. But I couldn't just stand by and watch her have to leave her home, and just because she was forgetful. And so I volunteered to help, and I think it was about 2 weeks. Over the next 2 weeks, I kept getting these phone calls, and somebody would call and say, "Is this Judy Cornish? I hear you're looking after so-and-so's mom. And my dad, he's living there in Moscow, and he's living alone, and he's getting forgetful. Could you check in on him?"
Wow.
And so that's where it started.
That's amazing.
Within about 2 months, I was looking after half a dozen of my elders, my neighbors, and I was already hooked because, here in America, I think we've always kind of thought that people who are experiencing dementia or Alzheimer's are losing their minds. They're becoming crazy.
Right.
And that's just not true.
No.
And I could see that. So, once I began spending time with people, I couldn't put my finger on it, but I was sure that there must be a way to work with it. There must be a pattern in the skills that are kept and the skills that are lost.
Right.
There must be a way to know what that path will look like. And because as families, if we could just understand what's happening, and then we'd be able to see what to expect. And then we're able to provide really kind support. And then the person isn't going to be as upset or feel as insecure and at risk. And then as soon as that happens, companionship is back, and there's less stress for the family.
And that's incredibly important.
Yeah, we must, I look, especially now that we have COVID and our care facilities, it's become so much more complicated to provide care to a great number of people who are experiencing dementia or who are elderly and frail.
Right.
And so now even it's more important than ever that we as families are able to provide the kindest, most supportive care we can for as long as we can to put off that move into the care facility.
Definitely. I think, and just as you said, to be able to provide that kind support and finding that happy medium of what that kind support looks like. And for me, I know for our family, it was a challenge. It is still a challenge. The fact that we get to live our lives and we're doing our own thing and going in different directions and checking in on mom occasionally and not being there to see the every day, all day, in the evenings, throughout the night, just to see the changes that are taking place and to know what type of support she needs and when she needs it. And coming from that place of compassion and kindness instead of frustration and lack of empathy, or many times myself, I was personally impatient with, because there were so many things in the beginning that I didn't understand that was wrapped around her rational thinking. And I did fall to that thought process of, at first, early years, it was, yes, she is doing some crazy things. And we tended to laugh at some of the crazy things. But as time passed by, it was like, this isn't just crazy. This is bizarre. This is not right. And then you have to stop and think, what's happening?
That's right. And I think maybe it's like, because I've had such a varied background. I have worked so many different jobs. I'm not just a lawyer. I didn't go to law school until I was 40, I guess. And so when I started spending time with these, my neighbors, my new clients, and I was fascinated by dementia, by what was going on, because I was just sure there was a way to let them enjoy quality of life and keep on enjoying life rather than just keep failing and being upset and embarrassed and irritated. And so for me, when I really began spending time with them, the first thing I knew, and this was from my undergraduate program, my undergraduate studies, I was really interested in language and how we acquire a second language. And so actually I'd wanted to be a language professor, but I ended up having to go to law school instead. So one of the basic principles of how we as human beings learn languages is that your errors will be determined by the first language you learn. And so if my first language is English and I want to learn French, I'll make certain logical errors when I'm speaking French. And if my first language was, say, Cantonese, and then I want to learn English, I'll make certain logical errors. And the principle is that our brains make errors, but that our errors are logical. And so that was just kind of built into my perspective of human functioning. And so when I started spending time with all these people who were experiencing dementia, I just thought, well, there is logic. It's just that I can't see it yet. And I just need to spend more time and be with more people so that I can see it. To me, that was such an important thing to realize, is that our brains are logical. Our brains are programmed by our life experiences. And so when you see a loved one doing something that seems inexplicable, something that appears to be completely random, that's really not what's happening. There was some way that previous experience has determined. But, Jessica, one of the things I think is most important for us to understand. So gradually I began, and not having a medical background, when I was spending time with people, I was trying to evaluate what their skills were. So we know that we have certain cognitive skills as human beings. And so I was looking at them trying to identify which ones they were still using and which ones they weren't able to use anymore. And that, once we understand that, it just makes it so much less frustrating for ourselves.
Definitely.
And then it is so much easier to truly support them.
Right. Then you know where their limitations are and what you can or cannot do. And it definitely, for me, I had to learn that the limitations and the time of day even, that was best for Mom.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it doesn't matter whether we are experiencing dementia or not. As we live the day, all of this experiences and information we keep adding to what's in our brains. And then when we go to sleep at night, our brains sort through all that new information and experience and put it to rest and put it where it belongs for learning. That by the end of the day, even if you're raising kids, by 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, that they're more short-tempered and excitable, and their attention skills are less. And it's the same thing when we're experiencing dementia. And I think that's it's really limiting if you're trying to be the companion of somebody and you're looking at their behaviors as if their behaviors are symptoms of a disease. Because really behaviors can't be symptoms.
Right.
It's the symptom of a disease is something that's causing pain in the body or damage to an organ or something physical.
Right.
And when we begin to look at somebody's behavior as if that's the proof of a disease, we forget that we're just people, and that we're experiencing emotional distress, and that how we feel and the emotions we feel is what determines how we behave.
Right.
So it's we're confusing the expression of emotional unease as symptom of disease.
And I'm glad you said that, because that was one of the things that I had to, there was the time period that I was trying to check on Mom and still work full time and do the phone call. And I didn't have eyes on her, and I had to trust that she was fine when she said she was fine, unless I saw for myself. Yeah. And then having to step into her world and see why she wasn't fine or what she considered as fine. It made me start to really look at this in a totally different way as far as dementia not being considered a disease. Because every time I said that, I made that connection with her, it really offended her. I'm not a diseased person. There's nothing wrong with me. And so I had to really get close and personal with her and just kind of observe what was she considering normal and why was that not so normal to me in comparison to what I was able to do.
Right. Boy, one of it, because I'm in my 60s now, and one thing I'm noticing more and more, I think the first time I noticed that I was beginning to lose my physical and cognitive skills, that they were changing, would have been in my late 40s, and I began having trouble reading close up. I needed bifocals. And at first it seemed like such an imposition to not be able to just pick up a book and read it without assistance. And then I gradually got used to it. And as I was going through my 50s, I've seen, as you age, your memory skills do become less, they become slower. And actually it's because we've got so much in our brains. The more we live, the longer we live, the more experiences and the more knowledge is stored in the brain, and the longer it will take to find what you're looking for. But also physical things. I've practiced Tai Chi my entire life, and it's harder for me to practice because physically my body is changing. So you know what I think happens? So let's say I begin now to, well, in my 40s, I really felt the loss of that, my vision, my close-up vision.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, it felt so unnatural.
Yes.
Going through 50s, now into 60s, I'm getting used to losing skills. And now I accommodate and accept gradual loss in many areas. Boy, by the time I get into my 70s, I'm going to be really good at it, right? Nothing is going to flat me. Nothing will bother me. And then let's say I develop dementia.
Right.
Well, let me tell you, if I am used to accepting gradual diminishment,
right,
and then I begin to experience something more, and my kids start paying attention and thinking, Mom needs help, maybe we need to change something.
Mm-hmm.
The main thought in my head is going to be, everything's fine, don't anybody interrupt my carefully ordered life. And, and so like if you've been diagnosed with dementia, we call that masking. But actually we all do it throughout our lives. We always do. Every time we are in a social situation and we're bored, but we carry on smiling.
True.
And pretending that we are glad to be there and engaged.
Yes.
That's masking.
Exactly.
So I'm right there with your mom. It's so hard, isn't it?
It is.
To be able to, yeah. Because you love her and you just want her life to be good and you want her to be safe and to be able to enjoy the things she loves.
Yes. And that's the thing is, and that's something that I really struggled with, because trying to help her have that quality of life, none of us know when our last day or our last breath will be. And so as time went by with her, my focus came more and more on her having a quality of life. But that was really hard, because then it got to the point where I felt like I was trying to force her to have a quality of life that she didn't care to have or no longer wanted.
Okay, so two things. Let's back up just a sec, because I should comment. I should say that when people are experiencing dementia, they may or may not also be unable to perceive that their skills are actually changing.
Right.
So it's called Anasagnosia. So some of us are going to have a parent or a loved one who is entirely able to understand that they're losing skills. And your experience with the person who knows they're losing skills is going to be that it's going to be like the elephant in the room a lot of the time, that they will be terrified deep down, and they are grieving, and they very well might appear to be depressed, but they're grieving because they know what's going to happen. They know what they're losing, and they know what will happen to their families. They know the cost. But then others of us, we have a loved one who is completely unable to perceive that they're losing skills. Like sometimes people are able to say, yeah, I know, I'm getting a little forgetful. But they're completely unable to admit or perceive that they cannot make decisions anymore because their rational thinking skills are fading away.
Yes.
So they can't understand that they're putting themselves at risk. And so these people, instead of being fearful and grieving, they're angry, they're irritated, they become paranoid, they're protective of their personal space. They might lock the kids out of the house. It's so different if you can't understand that your skills are changing. And that just happens when the dementia affects the part of the brain that allows self-knowledge. So really, I think your listeners were divided into these two main categories. Those who are dealing with awareness in grief and fear, and then those who deal with anger and refusal and paranoia.
Yes. I think I
So
can relate to the second part, the anger and denial and the frustrations. And that's where I couldn't.
yeah,
I had to allow her. And I think it was just as difficult for her with me trying to help her have a quality of life as it was for me to watch what her idea of quality of life was and sit back and just
right.
observe and allow it
Yeah.
within certain healthy boundaries, of course. It's difficult.
And yet, the more you try to put in a healthy boundary, the harder she'll push back.
Yes,
It's,
of course.
you know what we do with at Dawn? I call it caregiving by stealth. And so when somebody can comprehend it, we let it be the elephant in the room, but they're grateful and they accept help. And so you gradually give them more and more help. But boy, if there's Anasagnosia, what we do is we present caregivers as friends. And it's a friend who shows up who likes to do the same thing. Like there was one woman living at home alone in the family home. And then she had a daughter who lived, about half an hour out of town. And so this woman, we'll call her Mary, she has 3 little dogs. Now, her memory wasn't very bad. Her memory was, spotty, beginning to forget names. Every once in a while, she'd forget that something had occurred, an event. She'd lose knowledge of an event. But the worst part for her, what she lost first, was rational thinking skills. And these little dogs. So she forgot, or she lost the understanding that little dogs need to go outside regularly. And pretty soon, these little dogs, of course, would mess on the carpet. Well, when she walked back into the living room and she saw a deposit on the carpet, she would reach over and pick it up and put it on the coffee table. Because you don't want things falling on the floor.
Oh, no.
and so, her ability to recognize how unsanitary and the hygiene risks was completely gone. Now, if her daughter did, her daughter tried, she'd say, "Mom, the dogs have to go out. You've got to set a timer. Let them out once an hour. Your house is beginning to smell. Look at your carpet; it's been ruined.
Exactly.
The bedroom smell. Everything's terrible. You can't pick up dog poop and put it on the coffee table. You need to use a paper towel." She was explaining to her mom all the reasons why. And she was saying, you need to, you should, you have to, you must, you cannot. But when you think about what that is, that's the daughter asking the mother to use rational thinking skills to comprehend why.
Right.
And to ask somebody who's lost their thinking skills, their rational thinking skills, to ask them to understand why they should do something or why they shouldn't is just like saying to somebody who's lost their eyesight,
right?
Mom, I know you lost your eyesight, but here's the deal. You used to be able to see, so I'm going to point to it. You just look at where I'm pointing and then you'll see it. It makes no sense.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
So it doesn't work. And so we need to just let ourselves off the hook. There's no sense trying. You can't say to a person who's lost rational thinking skills that I'll just explain it to you and then you'll understand.
Right.
That just isn't logical to even attempt it. And actually, when somebody has lost their rational thinking skills, they've lost the ability to compare what you're saying to what they think, or they've lost the ability to analyze or to prioritize why this is more important than that, or to see cause and effect. If I don't put the dogs out, they will need to go to the bathroom and they'll have to mess in the house.
Right.
And people lose this. That's rational thinking. So when we demand or we ask them to understand why, all it sounds like to the person without those skills, it sounds like an accusation. It sounds like you're accusing them of something.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, you get this reaction of refusal and anger and frustration.
Right.
But anyway, so what we did with that woman, so we learn about the situation. The daughter comes into my office and she tells me all about it. And she says, we're just going to have to lock Mom up. We're going to have to put her in a care facility because, this is unsanitary and it's dangerous and it's terrible.
Right.
And so what we did was we had one of my caregivers who had a small dog. We had her go over to the woman's house and ring the bell. And she had her little dog with her. And so, of course, Mary opens the door and all the dogs are milling around their feet and barking like crazy. And there stands Heike. And Heike's got her little dog in her arms. And she says, hi, my name's Heike. Oh, you've got little dogs too. Perfect. Would you like to take the dogs for a walk?
Mm-hmm.
Now, anybody who had rational thinking skills would realize this is a stranger at my door. This isn't normal or appropriate.
Right.
And they would have been affronted and said, I think you've got the wrong house, lady, and shut the door. And yet, for Mary, because she lacked those skills, she sees a nice-looking woman her age on the front step with a dog. Her dogs are right there at her feet. And she says, yeah, sure, let's go. And that was how Heike became Mary's friend. And that was how we got a caregiver into the house of a person who believed there was nothing wrong with their ability to make decisions or to look after themselves or take care of their pets. And, so when your loved one can't comprehend what's happening to them, it's really important that you tailor the way you're trying to provide help.
Yes.
And to help them stay safe and enjoy what they like in life.
Yes. And I experienced that very similar scenario with Mom. And by me telling her early on, I became the daughter, the naggy daughter that was always telling her what to do. Because it was, to me, it made sense. And if she really is still capable, then she would understand what I'm saying and she could do this. And then when it was obvious that she wasn't capable, then I would always revert to the thought before, oh, she's just being lazy. And it really wasn't the case. And so then it became the family dynamics was I'm the naggy daughter, but my sister would be the fun kind of playmate type of person that can come in and it didn't bother her. It didn't make any sense to her as far as the dog not being let out. And it's the things that once you start noticing, because it's ironic that you have that as an example, because we had this similar thing. And with Mom being the type that was the angry one, she would yell at the dog as if it was the dog's fault, but not realizing the hours had passed that you've put food and water down in the morning, and here it is late afternoon, and he hasn't been outside since the morning. But she would yell and scream at the dog and curse at him, and it was like it didn't make sense.
Yeah, and I had people who, as soon as they put the dog outside, that's it. They don't know there's a dog anymore.
Right.
And the poor neighbors, 8 hours later, are calling the police because that poor thing is still there shivering on the back step.
Right.
But,
it took me getting someone else in Mom's house to help. I had to find that because I was the naggy daughter that was controlling her. In her mind, I was controlling her, telling her what to do. But it took getting another caregiver in the neighborhood that was very close in age. And at first, Mom opposed to her being in her house because this was a stranger to her. But when I brought her in with me and said, I met her and I thought this was so great. She's also divorced and she also has a little pet, or she likes these things. And I deliberately, and of course, some of them were the therapeutic lies and some were not, but presented her a person that was close in age, that had similar background and similar interests. Then she just, within a couple of weeks, she latched on to this woman, and this woman became her best friend. And she started inviting her to our family dinners, holiday dinners. And it was just
Right.
It was a blessing.
Now your comment though about your daughter, I mean your sister, the two of you, and gradually one of you is the daughter who brings fun and the other is the daughter who nags.
Mm-hmm.
This is, a constant problem when people begin to experience dementia, is that relationships tend to get frozen and polarized, whereas they might not have been like truly polarized earlier in life. And I've seen so often the child who truly is putting their own life and needs aside for the needs of the parent beginning to experience dementia or experiencing dementia. And they're the ones that parent then targets as the bad guy. Mm-hmm. And yes. The way, it's so important to really think about these skills that are going. This loss of rational thinking, because dementia is not only the loss of memory skills.
Exactly.
It's rational thinking skill loss and it's attention skill loss. Mm-hmm. And it depends on the type of dementia you're experiencing as to which are going to go the soonest or first. Alzheimer's, it's memory skills that go first.
Right.
But boy, if with other forms or types of dementia, it's going to be rational thinking that goes first. And so you have to kind of work with that to avoid these pitfalls, like getting designated the bad guy that is trying to ruin my life.
Right.
We're always looking for a third party outside of the family that can be the bad guy.
Well, and that's what I learned eventually, is that that third party outside of the family is not treated as the bad guy, even when they say the same things that I say. Maybe it's a different tone because it's a different person and it's a different look of their appearance or whatever, but they're doing the same things that I was doing. It was frustrating, but a blessing. It was relieving and sad and heartbreaking. It was just a mixture of, well, at least mom's getting what she needs, period. That mom, as long as I'm doing what mom needs, she's always going to see me as that unfair, mean, controlling person.
That one just breaks my heart, though. And so I'm always working with that and trying to prevent that occurring when I'm setting up a care plan. Because, the reason it happens is it's partly the loss of memory skills. Mm-hmm. Because dementia will not only take entire memories away, you not only have lost memories,
right,
but you'll also have memories that become inaccurately recorded. Just out of the blue, all of a sudden, your mom wakes up one morning and you're responsible for something that you had never done. So your sister actually did it, but now you're the bad guy, you did it.
Right.
So you'll see that happen. But that's a loss of memory skills problem. But the other issue is this loss of rational thinking. And so if I cannot use, and maybe you and I should talk about what happens when we lose rational thinking from a functional point of view. If I cannot perceive cause and effect anymore, and boy, that's something that we people use from birth. So most of us have never even thought about what the world looks like if you can't perceive cause and effect.
Right.
But if you cannot perceive or follow a sequence, even a sequence of two, that changes all of your interactions with other people. Mm-hmm. And if you can't prioritize ideas or actions, that means you can't understand why you should stop doing this so that you can do that. Right. And so then the individual who truly cares about you, the one who loves you, who is trying to keep you safe and trying to help you make decisions that will help you stay independent as much as possible and enrich your life and live it safely, that person ends up being the bad guy.
Yeah.
And so it's almost predictable that every time somebody's experiencing dementia and there's more than two people in their life, one of them ends up being a bad guy. So
Yeah.
So with our care plans, we try to, it's like, okay, who's going to be the bad guy? It's got to be somebody other than this loving daughter. Or if we don't designate and find somebody, it'll end up being the loving, concerned daughter. So, like we'll find, sometimes it'll be an insurance company. Like one of our clients, she wouldn't shower at home. So one of her caregivers, one of her friends said, "Oh, Mary, I would just love to go to the hot tub and sit in the hot tub and soak, but I really don't want to go alone. Would you come with me?"
Nice.
And so Mary says, "Oh, honey, certainly, I'll come to the hot tub with you." And so that was how we could get her in the shower beforehand, in the changing room. And then we could get her into the hot tub. And so that way we've got the bathing problem solved. And the trouble was, once she got in, we couldn't get her out.
Exactly.
And she was on heart medication.
And that's not good.
So what do? If her caregiver friend had demanded that she get out of the hot tub, she'd have gotten mad at her, and that would have started impeding the relationship.
Right.
So what she would do is she'd say, "Oh, Mary, we got to get out quick. That insurance company, if they catch us in here more than 15 minutes, they'll shut this place down, and we won't be able to come to the hot tub anymore." So,
nice.
And that worked for that woman. It worked. It was that insurance company. Oh boy, those guys, so unreasonable. They make up these rules, and we both have to follow them. So, like, one thing you can do if you are getting designated the bad guy, look for some distant entity. And again, it doesn't have to be rational, because your mom doesn't have rational thinking.
Right.
But if you partner with your mom and both of you are being subjected to this requirements of the third party, then you get your mom's empathy and love coming back out. And I've seen that help,
Yes.
In situations like that.
It helped when I had mom's caregivers in her community remind her, "Oh, you've got a wonderful daughter. You should be so grateful you've had this person doing this or that for you, because I've seen others who they will never do anything." And so she would
That's right.
kind of get to that point where she was agreeing with them. And then eventually I saw the difference in her towards me. But it took someone else telling. And again, it's that heartbreaking moment. Yeah, it takes that while for it to come through. And thankfully it did. But it doesn't stop it from damaging the relationships. So like the relationships between my siblings is very estranged at this point. Just because there is that misunderstanding of what dementia is. And it's just like you said, the loss of memory in connection with Alzheimer's. But mom didn't have Alzheimer's in the beginning. So that rationale was the first thing that went. And so every time I tried to bring up, mom is not doing these things, or she is doing these things, and that's connecting the dots to frontal temporal dementia, not Alzheimer's. And so that was one of the things I was finding and very frustrating, is that there's so many people in the world that don't understand what dementia is, but they know of dementia and they know of Alzheimer's, and they automatically connect Alzheimer's and memory. And so therefore, if their loved one isn't having problems with memory, then they're thinking they're fine. They're just doing these bizarre, funny or crazy or odd things. But and it's just, there's such a disconnect. And so yet again, I fall into this, you don't know what you're talking about. And I have had so many times where I've been frustrated trying to convince others, I know what I'm talking about. I have lived this with her. I have watched. These are and that's where you kind of find that fine line of what are the behaviors versus the mood and mood management areas. Right.
That your experience is so common. So many people, because it's so odd. Here in the United States, like I immigrated here 40 years ago, and I can't remember when I first heard about Alzheimer's or the Alzheimer's Association. That, it's been I guess I'm in year 11 right now, teaching and consulting and providing care, owning a company that provides strictly dementia care. You know, I started the Doan Method and the Dementia and Alzheimer's Wellbeing Network. I formed it, I guess, formally as a business in 2014. I've talked to so many people, so many families. I work with so many people who are experiencing dementia, but I can't say that it's been 60 to 80% of the people who I've worked with are experiencing Alzheimer's version of dementia.
Yeah.
It's about 20%. And I don't know, I'm not going to question I guess I am. I'm questioning the statistics that so much attention was given to, has been placed historically on Alzheimer's that Alzheimer's is easy because somebody who loses their memory skills it's much easier to help them begin to feel safe in the present and begin to accept care than it is to be dealing with any other type of dementia where people are losing rational thinking skills first. Or, you know, now, like people who, so dementia took me 5 years, but spending more of my time with people experiencing dementia than people who weren't. My law practice disappeared. I was on hold from the day that woman, my neighbor's daughter, told me they were going to put her in a care facility.
Wow.
I spent all of my time with people who were experiencing dementia, different kinds of people. You know, she was an artist and a housewife and an after-school teacher. I've had CEOs and world-famous PhDs in their field and professors and ranchers and people who are engineers and accountants and everything you can think of. And finally, over the first couple of years, it was probably 2 years, before I could really see that there is a pattern. It's not a medical pattern.
Right.
It's not disease plus symptoms equals treatment equals cure. You could do that with a disease. You can do that with Alzheimer's disease.
Exactly.
But dementia is the result of any number of diseases, any number of bad reactions to, say, anesthetic or chemo. It can be because you had a traumatic brain injury earlier in life. It could be because you've been experiencing cardiovascular disease for some period of time.
Absolutely.
We don't even know why children are beginning to have dementia. It has to be lifestyle. It has to be nutritional.
Exactly.
We're not going to cure dementia.
No.
But the pattern is whoever you are and whatever form of dementia you're experiencing, you're eventually going to see changes you're going to lose your memory skills, and you're going to lose the ability to access information from the past. That is, in essence, as a concept, that's your remembering self. You're losing that. You will eventually live in the present. And the present is about 3 seconds.
Right.
But our psychological perception of now is about 3 seconds. And when somebody completely loses their memory skills, you'll see them. You can count. Hey, Judy, where are we going? Oh, I thought we'd go for a drive. How's that sound? Oh, that sounds great. Count the 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. Hey, Judy, what are we doing right now?
Yes.
Oh, I thought we'd go for a drive. You know, that's memory loss. But everybody retains entirely the ability to exist in the present. And that would be psychologically your experiential self. Okay, that would be losing memory skills. But then everybody at some point eventually will lose rational thinking skills. And nobody loses intuitive thinking skills. So I know in America we don't think about the intuitive thinking skills. We call it intuition. We think it's vaguely connected with emotions. But it's actually our primary set of thinking skills. And your rational thinking skills are just tools. They're tools that help you deal with change and technology. They're tools that help you organize, see the relationship between information, facts. And so people lose that. We don't lose the ability to experience and receive stimuli, information. We lose the ability to interpret it or remember what it meant before.
Right.
And then the third thing that happens is people lose attention skills. And I think this one is the most ignored in dementia, that we lose the ability, well, we have 5 different types of attention. And with dementia, you're going to lose the ability to direct your attention, to redirect your attention, and to maintain your attention. You don't lose the ability to be focused. And, there are things that, boy, you sure wish they could forget about that. And you wish they could not be focused on something.
Right.
That attention skill remains. So to me, once I began to understand this pattern, we lose one set of thinking skills, but only the secondary, not the primary. We lose one of ourselves, but not our experiential self, not the part of us that lives in the present, only the part of us that's able to go into the past.
Right.
And we lose our ability to direct and maintain our attention. That there's still some skills that we can use and that help our functioning. And that's the mindlessness, the tools, automatic thinking scripts and muscle memory. But that's another whole topic. So, to me, that if I could just help caregivers and families understand what this means, what we lose and what we keep, then you can avoid so many pitfalls and really heartbreaking outcomes. And then you have less stress yourself because your expectations change.
Yes, my expectations absolutely had to change. I had to stop trying to convince her that she was either doing something wrong or that she had to come meet me halfway or meet me in my world. I had to change my expectations and understand what her limitations truly were and to meet her in her space.
Yeah, because a little while ago you mentioned therapeutic lying, and I know I hear that in the United States. I'll hear people talking about white lies or little fibs or therapeutic lying, but I think we're a little bit confused about what it means to tell the truth and what it means to tell a lie, and what integrity really entails. And so when I teach the Dawn method, I deal with this, and actually what it is it's a technique that is taught to medical professionals called reality orientation.
Yes.
And but here in the U.S. we have a real problem with it because we do deeply believe in telling the truth. We do, and it's because we love integrity and we love honesty, and that's a good thing. But we need to think about what that actually means. And are we actually telling somebody lies if we don't attempt to correct their misperceptions about what's going on in the present? Did you have trouble with your mom, like interacting with your mom with that?
Yes, I did. And that was where I kind of had to recreate the reality, and I had to find ways, and I learned very quickly to minimize arguments and the bickering. I had to find ways to agree with her and go through this process of yes and, like, okay, I agree with you. I also want to say this, or I also want to bring your attention this direction as well. And so I struggled back and forth. Like I said before, the caregiver that I brought in to help her, I told her it's a friend of mine and I met throughout the neighborhood, and I just thought she'd be a great fit. But It was more
Perfect.
so the seeking out of the help, and it was a response to my needs, my response to my prayers, really. And so introducing this person to Mom, I struggled with that because I didn't want to lie to her. I didn't want to bring this total stranger into her room or into her world and her space with knowing that. So I knew if I was going to receive any reprieve from the arguing and the fighting and being seen as the bad person all the time, I needed to bring this person in. It had to work. And so being able to tell her, hey, Mom, I've got this great friend, and she's also divorced, which was true, and had been remarried. And within, and pointed out, I found things specifically that I knew Mom would focus on. And it was amazing because right away Mom went from, I don't want this stranger. Oh, she's divorced too. And so they had this little banter. We were able to talk about like the bitter divorced women that could talk about their experiences. And, oh, my husband used to do this. Did he do that? And I saw that it was working. And so it made me feel better about telling her the lie of who this person really was. And, that added to our dynamic, the sibling dynamic as well, because where my younger sister didn't agree with this individual in the home with Mom and how this came to be, and that I was paying her to be there, she wanted Mom to know the truth. And I was just like, please don't, please don't. How much of this truth, because that's what it comes down to. How important is that truth? Are you willing to hurt them to tell them the truth?
Right.
Or are you going to be able to say something to them that actually helps them in the long run? So it's that's a fine line.
Exactly the issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what this is a really thorny issue. And if you love somebody who's experiencing dementia, who's losing rational thinking skills and constantly, ever increasingly putting themselves at risk, you are forced to grapple with it. You cannot avoid it. Yeah. And it's kind of like, actually like raising kids, but we don't think about it that way. But here's the deal. In America, here's how we think about truth. Thou shalt not tell a lie, not to your family, not to your friends, not in the community, not in business, not at all. Do not tell lies. That's what we believe, right?
Right.
Now, there's other cultures that have a different definition, and they're neither better than us nor worse than us. This is not an issue of good, bad, morality, better or worse. Right. This is different. So there's other ways to set up society. And there are other cultures where it's, thou shalt not tell a lie, not to your family. Well, you might have to a friend if it's going to hurt a family member. And in the community, same thing. You try to tell the truth, but my goodness, if it's going to hurt your family, you can't.
Right.
And then in business, my goodness, how could you tell the truth in business? You wouldn't be able to stay in business. You'll go broke.
Exactly.
I mean, this is societal ways to define truth and who we share it with. Okay, so keeping that in mind, let's go back to us Americans. We say, thou shalt not tell a lie, period.
Right.
All right. And then your 2-year-old daughter comes to you and says, Mommy, where do babies come from?
Exactly. And what's the first thing we do?
Right. What do? You don't say, well, honey, come sit on my lap. I'll get my computer. There's lots of videos and I'll show it all to you.
Exactly.
That's not what we do. Now, why don't we tell her the truth? We don't tell her the truth because she's not cognitively or emotionally ready for it. And so we take that into account, and we are kind. It would be unkind to tell her the whole truth. So we are kind by taking into consideration her cognitive abilities and her emotional maturity. Exactly. Okay, so now she's 6 years old. You're going to give her a little more information. She's 12 years old. She gets the fuller story. So it's not a matter of telling her lies. Well, actually, we do, don't we? Because we tell our kids they're Santa Claus and Easter bunnies.
Exactly.
And, so, but our motivation and what shapes how we deal with the amount of truth we share is kindness, and it's based on the person's abilities. Now, fast forward to your mom. Let's say your mom has Alzheimer's and she can't remember what has happened in the past, and she can't remember that she's divorced because that information is now gone.
Right.
And she remembers still the early years of being married to her husband.
Right.
And she starts saying, she calls you guys up. She's like, every day, she's, honey, Jessica, where's Dad? Where's George? Where is he? He's not here. I don't understand. I tried to call his work, and that they say he doesn't work there anymore. What are you going to do? If she doesn't have the ability to use memory, if you constantly remind a person who's lost the ability to access information from the past, you're being cruel because you're expecting them to hear you. And if they believe you, you will be constantly asking them to go through grief all over again.
We don't want them to go through that over and over and over again, because they may not remember.
We're being kind.
Exactly. They may not remember that person is gone, whether they've passed or divorced, but they'll remember that feeling of loss more than they'll remember that person's gone. And so they stay in that.
And every time you tell them the truth, they go through it again.
Right.
It's so cruel.
Exactly.
So are you, and then here's the other situation. Here's the situation where it's not Alzheimer's, it's FTD, or it's Parkinson's, or it's cardiovascular induced dementia, or, something like that, where the person is actually losing rational thinking skills more quickly or first, ahead of losing memory skills.
Right.
And they say something, and it's just plain, it's false. It is not true. They think something's happening or has happened, and they say, I don't know, let's say your mom says to you, Jessica, you were here yesterday and you stole my favorite brooch. And you say, Mom, no, I didn't. You probably lost it. You're losing memory skills and you're getting forgetful, and I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that, Mom. And she says, but you did. I know you did. Okay, so there's a situation where it's primarily rational thinking that is the skill that's missing. And so you can explain it to her. You can explain A and B and C. Therefore, I couldn't have. I didn't. I wouldn't. But if she doesn't have rational thinking skills, she's not going to be able to hear your explanation and consider her own explanation and recognize which is more likely.
Exactly.
And so instead of getting heartbreak and grief, you get anger and broken relationship.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And both, yeah. But, so this isn't really an issue of truth. And I really resist this idea of it being a lie. It's just that we recognize what skills the person has, and we tailor what we demand they believe or accept. And so like in the second example, you'd be saying, oh goodness, Mom, let's go take a look. Let's double check and make sure. Let's go look for it. And hopefully you're going to find it. But we never succeed. It ruins our relationships with our loved ones if we demand that they use rational thinking skills and memory skills to understand reality clearly. Because they're ever increasingly becoming less able to do that.
Here's another scenario that I have that I had to learn how to deal with, and it was the refrigerator. So mom became this rational, over the years of her rationale becoming less and less, she became more of a hoarder. And so she would order food, whether it was delivered pizza or Chinese food or anything, or if we cooked for her and there were meals that were left in the refrigerator, that loss of time passage, she would keep all this food in the refrigerator. And one thing happened where she would forget that she needed dog food. So she would take the food from the refrigerator and feed to the dog, which made the dog sick and throw up on the carpet, which made her angry. Or she would eventually eat the food herself and get sick and have, bellyache, vomit, diarrhea, what have you, and be in bed because she's sick all the time. And this is where, when I finally started to come in to see her, I learned every time I come in, especially the days that she's on it's a shower day, getting her in the shower, that's a whole nother conversation, but getting her in the shower, I would quickly get her to the point where she was capable, either seated in the shower, no risk of fall. And then I would dash to the kitchen, go through a refrigerator, throw the stuff out real quick, because there were items that I knew were so bad. But if she was there in the kitchen with me, she would say, "You're taking my stuff. You're throwing away my stuff. You're from the throwaway generation. You don't save anything." And I would go through and explain to her time and time again why the rancid food was not good for her. And it just only frustrated me more. So I had to find ways to do things around her.
Because she probably is, she's probably losing her sense of smell as she gets older.
Absolutely. That's, going
so you're saying, "Mom, this is rancid." And she's saying, "No, it isn't. It's perfectly fine."
Yeah. And so I'd say, "So go ahead. Do you want to eat this?" And I'd open it up so she could see the penicillin or whatever else is growing in.
Green. Yeah.
And she would say, "Oh, maybe not that one."
But you know what? But if she's lost her sense of cause and effect, she's not able to perceive that if she eats old food, she will get sick.
Exactly.
Or that if she feeds it to the dog will vomit on the carpet. And, and she can't sequence. So she can't see that if the food is delivered on Monday and this is 2 weeks later, the food cannot be edible. She can't see that either.
Right.
And she can't prioritize that it's much more important to throw something away and be wasteful than to eat it and end up sick. Your health is more important. Right. So, that's exactly how you have to deal with it when somebody is unable to use rational thinking skills. And you had to do it secretly. And my goodness, we do this all the time, where I'll take the client out the front door to go for lunch or a scenic drive or to get a hot chocolate. And a caregiver goes in the back door to eliminate, food that's past its pull date and sanitize all the counters and sinks and toilets. And it gets to the point where they're so unable to see sequence or cause and effect that you can wash the sheets and remake the bed. You can put all of the clothes are just magically back in the cupboards, in the drawers, clean and neatly folded while they're gone. And that way it's not that, I suppose you could say, I'm being dishonest and doing this behind her back. But on the other hand, we should be kind. We should be kind and do this behind her back because she's not able to join us in recognizing the danger. Exactly. So you're acting out of love. And I don't see that as any lack of integrity or truthfulness at all. It's just kindness.
And that's what I was trying to express to the family. And some of it they understood, some of it they didn't. And there was this mix of opinions. And so we just agree to disagree. And we'll just the divide, the great divide, just kept getting wider and wider, and it was unfortunate. But I know other families, because I've talked to other caregivers and support groups, that they experience the same. So it finally made me feel like, okay, it's not just mom, it's not just me. She's not just doing this to be difficult with me. She's not I am doing something
No.
right. I'm
Yeah.
not doing something wrong. I'm not hurting her. I'm helping her. You know, having to do my own personal
Right.
self-talk to get through it.
Yep. Yep. It's so hard, isn't it? Because our society, we so deeply believe in just this strict "thou shalt not lie" period,
Exactly.
and yet we don't do it.
Exactly.
That's not what we do. That's what we say we do.
Right.
And it's so hard because our society. Think about going through the school system in the United States.
Mm.
It's all about correctness, and it's based on memory
Right.
skills.
Right.
If you want to get A+ all the way to your PhD, you just need to have good memory skills.
Right.
And we prize that. Look at who we pay the big bucks.
Mm-hmm.
We pay lawyers and surgeons and the CEOs of companies.
Right.
We also pay people to play organized sports, but that's a different topic. But, you know, we prize memory skills and we prize rational thinking to a degree. It would be more accurate to say that we denigrate intuitive thinking skills.
Mm-hmm.
But our society loves correctness.
I know. We
love that. And if you love somebody, if you want an interpersonal relationship, it's kind of like deciding whether you want to win the battle or win the war. Mm-hmm. Do you want to have a relationship or do you want to be correct?
Right.
And once our ability to use these skills, memory skills and rational thinking skills, begins to fade away, our companions need to let correctness go if they want to be able to maintain a loving relationship. I think it's a societal thing where we're hampered by what we value.
And that's also why some of this valuing your loved ones to the point of wanting to do what's best for them. I love that you refer to this in your TED Talk as getting that diagnosis sooner than later, because we can help our loved ones so much more if we get their diagnosis sooner than later, because then the learning process for everyone involved begins finally.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because, I know people will get really frustrated and they'll say, I keep telling my dad, I keep telling my mom that they have dementia. They must have dementia. We have to go to the doctor. And then you get to the doctor and the doctor is you get 14 minutes maybe total at the appointment. And the doctor, they might do a mini mental test. And boy, if you ever taught elementary school, you're going to ace that thing even when you're in the middle stages of dementia because you're so good at those particular skills. But we need as families, we need to look for dementia and try to get that diagnosis early. The person who's experiencing dementia, they may be experiencing Anasagnosia as well. And so you'll never be able to get them to be able to comprehend these changes that are occurring in their own brain. But for us as families, start the journey. Be aware and look for and try to get diagnosis early. Then you've got more time to learn about dementia, to learn about what to expect on the path. And when you give yourself time, it's much easier to begin to respond and be prepared for these sudden changes in the person's behavior, ability to care for themselves. They can happen very suddenly. Somebody who's plateaued for a year can suddenly go downhill overnight.
And that's where I did a previous podcast on stages, because that's something I noticed with my mother over the years, how it took several years, and towards her late stage 5, it used to be where I would see decline happen maybe once every 12 to 18 months. And then it became 8 to 12 months. And then it became 4 to 6 months. Yeah. And then it was every 2-3 months, I would see a little less and a little less and a little less. So it's the more I
Right.
was able to know early on, the more I was able to know what to expect. So I
Right.
was
Yeah.
adapting faster with those therapeutic lies and being able to stress less because I
Yeah.
knew this was coming. And not knowing what it looked like was one of the issues. But once it started to happen a little bit
Right.
more often, whatever that behavior or response was, then I realized, okay, this is another part of the decline. This is new. She didn't do this
Right.
before. And yeah, the diagnosis came much later. I found that by the time I was going to the doctor with Mom, I was actually telling the doctor, I think it's FTD.
Right.
And even the doctor and the
Yeah.
neurologist at first said, no, it's Alzheimer's. And I said, no, I think because she started with vascular. And it was, again,
Yeah.
frustration, annoyance. And I'm thinking, okay, you're the doctor. I'm not. But my opinion is that this is FTD. And sure enough, they went through her. I got a second opinion, got a different neurologist for her. And the neurologist that did that, she ordered a forensics neurologist to do the test for her. And sure enough, it came back.
Right.
Mom has FTD. And it was like, I
Oh,
wanted to just say, I told you so, but then it didn't do me any
you should.
good.
Yes.
It didn't really help because Mom still had dementia. So it was.
Right. No, that's right. But you don't think about it, though. Like 12 years ago, a neuropsychologist told me that 12 years ago in the U.S., and he told me this 2 years ago, so I guess it's 14 years ago now, they were still teaching in medical school that dementia is synonymous with normal aging. Oh, come on.
No.
So how many of our doctors practicing today in the United States have
Right.
graduated from medical school more than 14 years ago?
Exactly.
I have sat with families and I've sat with my clients in medical appointments, and I've had doctors say, well, yeah, I guess maybe it kind of looks like maybe you've got Alzheimer's. And I'll say, now, are you diagnosing Alzheimer's disease or are you diagnosing dementia? And I've had the doctor say, oh, well, they're both the same. I'm like, well, actually not. Here's what we've seen this client doing. And we're, with a history of cardiovascular disease, or, we're seeing changes in rational thinking abilities before we're seeing changes in memory. And, one doctor, to his credit, the family, the client had gone out with her daughter, and I'm sitting there with the son and the daughter, and I'm saying, here's the reasons why we think it is not Alzheimer's disease, but we do think it is dementia. And he's sitting there Googling it. So, we expect so much from our doctors.
I know.
If you as a family, if you can get the ball rolling, if you can get recognition that there are inexplicable behaviors or events in your parent's life, in your loved one's life, that could only be explained by cognitive losses, get the ball rolling, and then start learning about dementia. And watch and try to see, what kind of changes are you seeing? And learn more about our cognitive skills. Like that is what my mission in life is
Yes.
to help families and caregivers and the industry of
Yes.
caregiving in America to recognize and understand what the human cognitive skills are. 2 sets of thinking skills. It's basic neurology.
Right.
2 psychological selves. If you want to read about this, you read Ian McGilchrist, 3-time Oxford Fellow, neurologist, psychologist, philosopher. You read Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner, American. You read Ellen Langer, the Langer Institute of Mindfulness at Harvard, worldwide research. You read these people and you will find that we have rational thinking skills that are secondary. We have intuitive thinking skills that are primary. And we have a remembering self that we lose, that we remain fully experiential in the present.
Yes.
And everything we experience in the present affects how we feel. And how we feel affects and determines how we behave. Doesn't matter if we can remember or explain what happened a moment ago, we will still react.
Yes.
And then we do lose these attention skills. And when you lose those skills, if you want to prolong and enable your loved one to function at their highest level for as long as possible, you need to keep them in their familiar location for as long as possible. So they can use these automatic thinking scripts and muscle memory that all of us use every day and benefit from. But boy, if you've lost your attention skills and your ability to learn new things through losing your rational thinking skills, my goodness, those are important. Being able to perform a task using an automatic thinking script so you don't have to think about it.
Right.
Or get out of bed in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom and get back into bed.
Exactly.
Muscle memory, you've been doing it for 20 years or 50 years while you lived in that same building. So, yeah, that's my mission. It's like, let's learn more about cognitive skills that we have and the ones we lose to dementia so we can be kinder.
Yes.
And not be as frustrated. That would be good too.
This has been so great, Judy. I'm so glad you were able to take the time with me today, because this is valuable information for so many to learn. And that's the thing, is there's so much more that we aren't even aware of that we need to learn.
There is. That's right. Yeah.
So tell me.
Oh, there's so much good there. I mean, there's so much to think about, because I've seen, when I was able to wrap a care team and provide care and teach the family and just wrap my client with the Dawn method, with this recognition of what they can and cannot do and support, emotional support for the way they are emotionally being impacted by this change in these skills they've been using their whole lives, ever since birth. And when I got to do it, people get to live the last chapter of life in peace on their own schedule. Yeah. And boy, people just blossom. I mean, sometimes to lose your memories, life hurts us in so many ways. And by the time we become elders, we've got all these wounds and scars and things we just can barely even think about. We wish we could forget. But if you get dementia, it all goes away.
Right.
And all of a sudden, this beautiful personality, the one you were born with, the one that has no scars and no wounds, that comes out. And I've seen relationships healed between family members, between spouses. And just when you watch somebody prepare to die, this is what people do. And even with dementia, and sometimes I think dementia helps us through our final chapter.
Yes.
When we're given the time, people, I've watched them so often just over the weeks and over the months, they're sorting through life on some deep level. And then when they do pass, it's peaceful. What a gift. Right. What a way to love our family, to be able to do that with them, or to help them be able to do it on their own.
True. So Judy, I appreciate you taking the time with us, sharing this information with us, and I know that the listeners are going to learn so much from you. So how do they go about finding you and the Dawn method?
Well, the Dawn method, the website is thedawnmethod.com. And that's the way to contact me. John and I did eventually try to retire again, but both of us live our lives around trying to help families who are trying to love a loved one and keep a loved one safe when dementia is in the picture. So on the website, the Dawn Method, there's the Dawn Home Care subscription for families. And that's available. You just sign on and it's yours for a year, and you can access the information and the little videos and go through them as many times as you wish, share them with other family members at the same time. Designed for families. And then I teach private classes to families. Sometimes I do teach in communities as well, but less now with COVID, less travel. But I'm always happy to work and teach a family privately because dementia is so personal.
Yes.
Everybody's experience is personal.
Exactly.
And different. And then I also consult. And so all of that's on the website. Just send me an email at Judy@the Dawn Method, or you can sign up on the website as well. But
excellent.
I'm glad to help. So,
well, I love that it was obviously a calling in your life, and I'm glad that you answered the call.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to share with your listeners.
Definitely. We will also be including links to your books of Dementia with Dignity and the Dementia Handbook as well. This information is so valuable. If you're questioning what dementia is, does my loved one possibly have it, or if any of this information that we spoke about resonates with you, then please check out her website at thedawnmethod.com. And I hope this gave you more food for thought, ladies and gentlemen. And until next time, be proactive. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today. We really hope you've enjoyed this episode. To learn more about proactive caregiving and to hear other episodes of this podcast, please visit www.jessicalazelcannon.com. This podcast is produced by Cannon Light Media, LLC, www.cannonlightmedia.com. Music provided by Chris Paradise.